Hey guys, I had just sat down on my computer and I heard God say as clear as day in an audible voice, walking on water. And I knew immediately as soon as I heard that what that meant. And this message is going to be for specifically some of you, but not for all of you. But for a lot of you, what God is really saying is that a lot of you, this is your walking on water moment. And for most of you who this message is for, that is going to ring so clear to you. You're going to know exactly what I'm talking about, and even more once I explain to you what God revealed to me that meant. So when God said walking on water, I knew immediately what he meant because it reminded me of when Peter was walking out on water to Jesus. And in that exact moment, he was literally in the middle of the ocean, guys, which means that he was at a point where he couldn't turn back to walk back to the boat, but he also couldn't focus on sinking because Jesus was in front of him, guys. So literally he was at the middle of the ocean. So what God is really saying is that a lot of you are at a point in your life where you're too far out to where you can't turn back to how things used to be. You can't go back to how things were. But you're also at a point where you're unsure of what's ahead, right? Because when Peter was walking on water, especially when he had already stepped out of the boat onto the water, he was at a point where he had no choice but to focus on Jesus because he was in the middle of the ocean, right? It's not like he could just walk back because he was in the middle of the ocean. He had no choice but to focus on Jesus, to focus on God. So a lot of you are at a point in your life where God has brought you out of the wilderness. And you guys know that I've been talking to a lot of you who are actually in the wilderness season, but this message isn't for some of you. This message is for those of you who God is wanting to bring out of the wilderness into the promised land. Some of you are still in the wilderness season right now, and that is where you're going to be for a minute because you just stepped into that. He just brought you out of Egypt. But a lot of you are about to come into your promised land. A lot of you are about to literally step into your promised land, but you're at a walk on water moment, meaning you're literally at the moment where you're almost close to Jesus and you're almost at your promised land, but you're too far ahead to turn back. You're too far ahead to go back to where God has called you out of. For an example, like maybe God called you out of your job and you're going to run a business and you're too far ahead to turn back to work a regular 9-to-5 job, but you're also unsure of what's ahead of you. A lot of you, God has called you out of old relationships and you're too far out of that old relationship to turn back to that person, but you're also unsure on what God has ahead of you. But what the walk on water moment means is that God wants you to focus on him, especially when you're almost to that promised land. And remember, we were told that, I think it's in the book of Matthew, we were told that Jesus was saying, like if Peter were not to focus on him, he would sink. And so what God is really saying through that is if you keep your eyes on him, you're going to be able to walk on water. So I want you guys to write this down because God's going to confirm this to you over the next couple of days or weeks or months or so, that this is your walk on water moment. I don't want this to be really, really long or drawn out, but a lot of you, this is going to be confirmation because you already know, but God is saying that this is your walk on water moment. And for some of you who feels like this moment isn't for you, you're about to walk on water. So in this moment, focus on Jesus because you're about to get to your promised land. Do not begin to focus on worldly things. Do not begin to stress on what could go wrong because think about it. In the moment where Peter was walking on water, it was storming around him. He could have easily looked around him and thought, oh, it's storming and this is not logical and I'm going to sink. But that's the whole purpose, guys. When you're walking on water, when you're in the walk on water moment, everything around you doesn't look logical. Everything around you doesn't make sense. Because in Peter's eyes and to the logical thinking person's eyes, walking on water does not make sense. And that's the whole point. It's not supposed to make sense because we're supposed to be focusing on Jesus. We're supposed to be strengthening our faith. It's a faith moment. So a lot of you are in a faith moment right now where you have nothing to rely on but your faith in God. And so this is your walk on water moment. This is the exact moment that God wants you to focus on him. This is the exact moment that God does not want you to turn your eyes off him. He wants you to focus on him because if you focus on him, you'll begin to walk on water. And a lot of you will understand exactly what I mean when I say this, but a lot of you feel like you have been drowning. You feel like you have been sinking, and you feel like you have been under so much pressure that you're literally drowning underwater. A lot of you feel like you're underwater, but what God is saying is that the enemy wants to trick you and make you think that you're drowning underwater, but God is saying, come up and walk on water with him. Come up and walk on water with him. This is your walk on water moment. Have faith in God. You're almost to the promised land. The enemy wants to deceive you and make you think that it's chaos around you, right? Because when Peter was walking on water, the storms were storming, the boat was, swaying with the wind. But as he was focusing on Jesus, he was walking on water. He did what was so-called considered impossible. And then shortly after that, the storms stopped. So do not let the enemy scare you with this trickery, because I understand that in the walk on water moment for a lot of you, things look kind of crazy right now. Things look like a lot of you are probably thinking, like, God, where are you in this moment? But he is there. Just focus on him. Remember the last thing that he said to you. Remember the promises that he spoke to you. Stand on those. This is your walk on water moment, and you're soon going to be to the promised land. You're soon going to be to exactly where God told you, and he has shown you in visions that you're going to be. So hold on. This is your walk on water moment, and you're about to get to your promised land.